There is a very specific kind of silence that happens when an avoidant starts pulling away from you. It is not empty, it is crowded. Crowded with unsent messages, with rehearsed explanations, with questions you swallow because you already know what the answer will feel like. Crowded with that sinking sensation in your chest when someone who once leaned in starts acting like your love is suddenly too loud, too close, too much, and the worst part is not even the distance. It is the confusion, because they did care, you felt it. You didn't imagine the softness in their eyes, you didn't invent the tenderness in their voice. You didn't hallucinate the way they opened up in rare, trembling pieces, as if every vulnerable sentence cost them something. It was real. That is what makes this so painful. If it had all been fake, your nervous system would know how to file it away. But this lingers, because an avoidant doesn't always leave with cruelty. Sometimes they leave with contradiction. They hold you close, then go cold. They confess, then disappear. They make you feel chosen, then make you feel like your presence has become a burden. And now you are left trying to solve an emotional crime scene with no witness, no confession, and no closure. So you replay everything, the texts, the pauses, the shift in tone. That look on their face when intimacy got too real, the moment they stopped reaching for you the same way, the moment their warmth became effort. The moment you could feel them backing away before they ever said a word. And if you have been in this dynamic long enough, you know what comes next. You blame yourself. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe I should have been calmer. Maybe I should have given them more space. Maybe if I had loved them more gently, more intelligently, more carefully, they would have stayed. But here is the truth avoidants hate hearing. Your love was not the problem. Their inability to stay present with what they felt was. That truth lands like fire because it removes the fantasy that if you had just performed love more perfectly, they would have transformed. It exposes something deeper, something they spend years trying not to confront. Distance is not always discernment, detachment is not always strength, and emotional unavailability is not mystery. Sometimes it is fear with excellent PR. Sometimes it is a nervous system that learned to associate closeness with danger, need with weakness, and dependence with loss of control. So they do what they have always done. They create space and call it clarity. They go numb and call it peace. They withdraw and call it independence. They tell themselves they are just protecting their energy, when in reality they are protecting the part of themselves that does not know how to remain open once love becomes real. And avoidants hate hearing this because it strips the glamour from the pattern. It tells the truth, that what they call being not ready is often emotional overwhelm. What they call losing feelings is often deactivation. What they call needing space is sometimes the body trying to regulate the threat of intimacy before the mind has words for it. This is why the dynamic is so maddening, because on the surface it looks personal, but underneath it is physiological. When real closeness starts building, the avoidant nervous system can interpret that intimacy as risk. The amygdala begins scanning for danger, not because you are dangerous, but because vulnerability has been coded as unsafe. Cortisol rises, the body tightens. The mind starts searching for reasons to create distance. Little things suddenly feel irritating. Normal needs begin to feel invasive. Your tenderness starts registering not as comfort, but as pressure. And the more emotionally significant the connection becomes, the stronger the urge to escape it. That is why they can want you and retreat from you at the same time. That is why they can miss you and still avoid your call. That is why they can care deeply and act disturbingly indifferent. That is why the connection can feel sacred one day and unbearable the next. It is not always that they stopped feeling. It is that feeling too much activated survival. And once you understand that, a brutal realization emerges. You were never fighting for love. You were fighting against someone's conditioning. You are trying to build intimacy with a person whose body may have been reading intimacy as entrapment. You are offering reassurance to someone who didn't know how to receive reassurance without feeling exposed. You were trying to soothe wounds that only woke up more aggressively the safer the bond became. This is why your logic never worked. Because you were speaking to their mind, while their nervous system had already made the decision. And that is the truth avoidants hate hearing most of all. They did not lose you because you were too much. They lost you because they could not stay emotionally available long enough to hold something real. That truth burns because it makes them responsible, not villainous, responsible. And responsibility is terrifying for someone who has built an identity around escape routes. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything changes. The core concept is not revenge. It is not making them jealous. It is not becoming colder than they were. It is non-reactivity, not numbness, not suppression, non-reactivity. The kind that happens when you stop feeding your energy into the cycle that keeps their avoidance alive. The kind that happens when you stop trying to drag clarity out of someone who only knows how to produce it after they have lost access to you. The kind that says, without saying a word, I will no longer abandon myself to keep you comfortable in your dysfunction. That energy is devastating to an avoidant. Because avoidants are used to people reacting. They are used to your paragraphs, your tears, your attempts to make them understand. Your emotional availability staying online long after they have gone offline. They are used to pulling away and still feeling your presence waiting just outside the door. They are used to your empathy continuing to hold them even while they are failing to hold you. But non-reactivity breaks the script. Suddenly there is no chase, no pleading. No emotional over-explaining. No reaching back into a disappearing person and trying to recover the version of them that once felt close. Just stillness, and stillness is a mirror. At first, they may feel relief. This is important to understand. Your silence does not always disturb them immediately. In the beginning, it can feel like oxygen, no confrontation, no pressure. No emotional demand. Their body relaxes because the immediate trigger is gone. This is the phase that tricks people. They think, I guess they never cared, but avoidants are often delayed processors. They do not always feel the full weight of loss in the moment of separation. They feel it later when the nervous system settles, when the noise dies down, when there is no threat left to defend against and no emotional intensity left to outrun. Then the absence begins. And absence does something almost chemical. The dopamine they got from your warmth, your attention, your predictability, your emotional attunement, it vanishes. The subtle regulation your presence offered disappears. No good morning message, no emotional soft place to land, no one quietly reading the change in their tone. No one intuitively sensing what they could never articulate. No one holding the invisible emotional labor of the connection anymore. And once that is gone, the mind starts doing what the heart avoided. It revisits. They think about your voice at strange hours. They hear your honesty in the middle of other conversations. They remember the version of themselves that only existed around your safety. They replay the moment you finally stopped reaching, and something inside them starts to itch. Because now you are no longer available as emotional background music. You are now an absence with shape, an emptiness with memory. A person who once made them feel seen without forcing them to perform, and who is no longer there to keep translating their half-silences into love. This is where the power starts shifting. Not because you manipulated anything, but because when you stop reacting, they are finally left alone with themselves. And most avoidants do not actually fear your emotions as much as they fear what your emotions awaken in them. Need, guilt, longing, tenderness, dependency, shame. The terrifying possibility that they were loved well and still could not meet it. That is what non-reactivity exposes. It removes the fog. No more focusing on your intensity. No more hiding behind how complicated it all became. No more rewriting the narrative so that your desire for consistency looks like pressure and their withdrawal looks like wisdom. Now all that remains is the truth. They had something real in front of them, and they retreated. They may not say it like that. They may not even consciously think it in one clean sentence. But their body knows, and once their body knows, the missing starts. Then the curiosity, then the checking, then the rationalizing, then the late-night thought loops. Are they seeing someone else? Why do I suddenly feel them everywhere? Why does no one else feel like that? Why did I pull away when all they wanted was honesty? Why am I thinking about them now that they are gone quiet? Because this is the part no one tells you. Avoidants can obsess too, quietly, privately, proudly denying it while living inside it. They may not always reach out immediately. Some do, some wait. Some hover digitally. Some send low-risk messages. Some manufacture coincidences. Some test the waters with vague warmth. Some disappear for months and come back with a softness they couldn't access when you were actually there. But internally, something has shifted. Your stillness made contact with the truth they spend years outrunning. That truth is simple. You were not hard to love. They were hard to stay open for. And that sentence alone can undo years of self-blame. Because so many people who love avoidance become addicted to self-modification. They over-monitor their tone. They shrink their needs. They rehearse how to sound less intense, less attached, less human. They start managing their own nervous system like a hostage negotiation. Also, the avoidant doesn't feel cornered by normal emotional reality. That is not love. That is emotional contortion. And avoidants hate hearing this truth because it reveals the hidden cost of their pattern. Not just to you, but to themselves. Every time they run from closeness, they don't only lose a partner. They lose access to the version of themselves that might have healed through consistency. They lose the chance to discover that intimacy does not always swallow you whole. They lose the opportunity to build a nervous system that can actually tolerate being loved without needing to sabotage the source. So yes, they tell themselves stories. That it just wasn't the right timing, that the chemistry changed, that things got too intense, that they needed freedom, that they are better alone, that no one really understands them anyway. But beneath many of those stories is one unbearable reality. They felt deeply, they got scared, and they ran. That is the truth. And if they are not willing to face that truth, they repeat the same cycle with different faces until their life becomes a museum of almosts. Almost intimacy, almost honesty, almost love. Almost repair, almost softness, but never quite enough staying. This is why your transformation matters more than their realization, because here comes the danger. When the avoidant starts missing you, you may feel tempted to interpret that as victory, as proof, as the final confirmation that what you felt was real. And yes, it often is proof that you mattered. But mattering is not the same as being safe with someone. Being unforgettable is not the same as being chosen properly. Being missed is not the same as being met. That distinction can save your life. Because many avoidants return not when they are ready, but when the loss becomes uncomfortable enough to disturb their equilibrium. They come back with warmth, with nostalgia, with sudden clarity, with just enough vulnerability to reopen your hope. And if you are still starving for the version of them you met at the beginning, you will be tempted to call this change. Be careful. Temporary access is not transformation. Longing is not capacity. Remorse is not repair. If they return unchanged, they will make your empathy carry the weight again. They will let your tenderness become the bridge while they keep standing on their side of the river, admiring how much you understand them. They will speak in emotional fragments and let you assemble the meaning. They will lean on the safety of your heart while remaining untrained in the discipline of consistency. And this is the moment you must become someone new, not cruel, not closed, not bitter, clear enough to understand that the truth they hate hearing must also become the truth you stop betraying. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person to give what they had not built within themselves. That is different. And when that lands, you stop performing for crumbs. You stop seeing your emotional depth as a liability. You stop translating neglect into complexity and inconsistency into chemistry. You stop calling your hypervigilance intuition when, in truth, your body has just learned to survive unpredictability by becoming exquisitely alert. You begin to want something else. Peace. Reciprocity, steadiness, a love that does not trigger your nervous system into detective mode, a connection where closeness does not have to be purchased with self-abandonment. That is when your energy changes. You do not need to announce it. People feel it, especially avoidants. Because the same person who once bent themselves into impossible shapes to stay connected is now standing still, no longer trying to be more digestible. No longer trying to prove that their heart is low maintenance. No longer volunteering to be emotionally underfed in exchange for occasional tenderness. That shift is powerful because it cannot be manipulated. And once you reach that place, even if the avoidant comes back, they are no longer meeting the same version of you. They are meeting someone who has learned that love is not measured by how much confusion you can endure. It is measured by how safe you are allowed to be inside it. Read that again in your bones. Love is not proven by suffering silently while someone oscillates between desire and defense. Love is not depth if it leaves you chronically dysregulated. Love is not sacred just because it hurts in a sophisticated way. Sometimes pain is not a sign that the connection is profound. Sometimes it is a sign that you are trying to grow flowers in a room where someone keeps shutting out the light. And the final truth avoidants hate hearing is this. The person they called too much is often the person who simply refused to normalize emotional starvation. You are not too much for wanting consistency. You are not too much for wanting honesty. You are not too much for wanting presence after intimacy had already been invited in. You were just standing too close to someone who had mistaken withdrawal for self-protection for so long that real love felt invasive. That was never your shame to carry. So let them wrestle with their truth. Let them feel the echo. Let them miss what they mishandled. Let them sit in the discomfort of realizing that someone rare came into their life, and they responded with distance because closeness asked them to become accountable. That is theirs. And now, finally, here is yours. You do not need to be understood by someone who only values emotional truth after it is gone. You do not need delayed insight as compensation for immediate pain. You do not need to keep proving that your heart is worth choosing. Your worth is not waiting on the other side of their readiness. It is here, now. In the part of you that can feel deeply and still walk away from what cannot hold you. In the part of you that no longer confuses being wanted in moments with being valued in a life. In the part of you that chooses self-respect over emotional addiction. That is the identity shift. You are not the one left behind. You are the one who finally stopped leaving yourself. And once that happens, everything changes. Your voice gets steadier. Your standards get cleaner. Your nervous system stops craving chaos and starts craving truth. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop chasing explanations. You stop offering your softness to people who only know what to do with it once it is gone. You become unavailable to confusion, and that is real power. Not the power of making them regret you, the power of no longer needing their regret to confirm your value. So if an avoidant ever made you feel like loving deeply was the problem, let this be the sentence that breaks the spell. You are not too much. You are just real. And reality is exactly what people addicted to emotional distance can only handle in small doses, until they heal, or until they lose it. Either way, your job is no longer to wait around and find out.